Anyone can be scared, but we build our own fear. Welcome to Horror IR. Midtown Manhattan's Diamond District is a frantic river of humanity, a torrent of commerce at its most primal. Most visitors are swept away by the dazzling glare from thousands of carats and the raw, palpable ambition that hums in the air. But this district is an ocean, and its true masters lie not on the surface, but in its hidden strata. To find them, one must abandon the chaos of the street and ascend. One must venture into the lobbies of the old pre-war buildings, past security guards who have seen it all, and into the slow, creaking elevators that rise into the vertical labyrinth of the city. Here, the roar of the street fades, replaced by the aromas of floor polish, old paper, and industrial solvents. Our journey begins inside the Ansonia building. Its lobby is a study in faded grandeur, with a marble floor worn by a century of footsteps. We bypass the bustling lower floors and take the manually operated elevator, a wrought iron cage piloted by an old man with a practiced, gentle touch, to the 14th floor. The hallway here is quiet, almost unnervingly so. The doors are anonymous, marked only by numbers. Tucked away at the very end of the corridor, past the offices of diamond setters and pearl dealers, is a door of heavy oak with a pane of frosted glass. There is no name, no number, only a single word stenciled in faded black paint. Horologist. To knock is to set a quiet chain of events into motion. A silence, then the soft click of a lock, and the door swings inward. The man who stands there is Alistair Finch. He is as out of place in the modern world as his profession. Tall, thin, his shoulders slightly rounded from decades hunched over a workbench. His eyes, magnified by silver-rimmed spectacles, are startlingly clear and focused. They possess an unnerving stillness, the patient gaze of a man who measures his life not in years, but in the precise vibrations of a tuning fork. He does not smile or frown. He simply waits, head tilted slightly, as if listening to a frequency the rest of the city has long since forgotten. The interior of the workshop is not a space one enters, but a world one is absorbed into. It is a cavern of ticking, a symphony of 1,000 tiny heartbeats. The very air seems to vibrate with the collective pulse of countless timepieces. A slow, deliberate Seth Thomas regulator clock hangs on the wall, its long pendulum swinging in a hypnotic, silent arc. Shelves are filled with Art Deco mantel clocks, and from display cases, elegant Swiss dress watches and rugged military chronometers add their own distinct rhythms to the chorus. The main illumination comes from Finch's workbench, where a brilliant pool of white light falls upon a universe in miniature. The interior of the workshop is not a space one enters, but a world one is absorbed into. It is a cavern of ticking, a symphony of 1,000 tiny heartbeats. The very air seems to vibrate with the collective pulse of countless timepieces. A slow, deliberate Seth Thomas regulator clock hangs on the wall, its long pendulum swinging in a hypnotic, silent arc. Shelves are filled with Art Deco mantel clocks, and from display cases, elegant Swiss dress watches and rugged military chronometers add their own distinct rhythms to the chorus. The main illumination comes from Finch's workbench, where a brilliant pool of white light falls upon a universe in miniature. The orderly pulse of the workshop is broken by a sharp, hesitant knock. It is the sound of uncertainty. Alistair Finch lays down his tweezers and opens the door. Standing before him is a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s. She is the embodiment of the city below: sleek trousers, a stylish coat, a leather messenger bag. "Mr. Finch?" she asks, her voice quiet. He opens the door wider, a silent invitation. The woman steps inside, her modern presence a stark contrast to the analog world of the workshop. Her eyes widen as she takes in the symphony of ticking, the sense of a place existing outside of its own time. "My name is Clara," she says. "This is... well, it's a bit of a long shot," Clara says. She carefully places the small, cloth-wrapped bundle on a clear space on the counter. With gentle fingers, she unwraps the gray jeweler's cloth to reveal a small, tarnished object. It is a trench watch from the First World War. Its case, once bright nickel, is now a dull, milky gray, pitted and scratched by the passage of a century and the violence of its original purpose. The crystal is a spiderweb of fine cracks, yellowed with age. The hands, once filled with luminous radium, are now dark skeletons frozen at the hour of 4:17. It is not ticking. It is a vessel of silence. Clara looks from the broken watch to Alistair Finch's impassive face. "It was my great-grandfather's," she explains. "He was a doughboy, 77th Infantry Division. Fought in the Meuse-Argonne. The story goes that the watch stopped the day he was wounded by shrapnel, and he never tried to fix it. It was a bad omen," he said. "It's been in a box of medals and letters ever since." Alistair Finch reaches for his loupe, screwing it into his eye with a practiced gesture. He picks up the watch, his touch impossibly delicate, his fingers cradling the small, battered object as if it were a fragile egg. Alistair Finch turns the watch over and over, his magnified eyes scanning every flaw. He finds a small lip on the case back, and with a specialized knife, pops it open. The movement within is a landscape of dulled brass and blued steel. His gaze moves with practiced speed, diagnosing the century of stillness. He sees the dark, gummy residue of dried oils and the faint, spider-like trace of rust. And then he sees it. The balance staff, the heart of the watch, has a broken pivot, a point of steel shattered to a fraction of the width of a human hair. "The mainspring is intact," he states more to himself than to her. "But the shock, your great-grandfather was right. It did not die of old age. It was killed." The following morning, Finch's first task is not repair, but archaeology. He carefully removes the two remaining hands, their skeletal forms lifting away to reveal the cracked and stained enamel dial. He notes how the radium paint has burned faint shadows of the hand's final position onto the dial, a ghostly photograph of the exact moment its life had ended, 4:17. As he works to release the movement from the tarnished nickel case, he unscrews the crown. It has a gritty feel, and a few grains of what looks like ancient, dried mud fall onto his mat. He imagines the soldier winding the watch with dirty, trembling fingers in the pre-dawn chill. With the movement free, Finch picks up the empty case. It feels light, hollowed out, its soul now resting on his bench. He runs a finger along the inside of the case back, feeling the faint grooves left by the watchmaker a century ago. It is then that his nail catches on something. He screws his loupe back into his eye and angles the case under the light. There, almost invisible against the circular machining marks, are a series of impossibly fine scratches, clearly not part of the original manufacturing. It is a name, engraved by an unsteady hand, likely with a pin or the tip of a knife. Léonie. The name is a whisper from the past, a secret held within the machine. The anonymous soldier suddenly has a heart, a connection that reached beyond the battlefield. Alistair Finch, the stoic horologist, feels the quiet weight of the discovery. He is no longer just a watchmaker. He is a keeper of secrets, a confidant to a ghost. By midday, the trench watch is completely disassembled. Its dozens of components lay before him, an intricate map of a life interrupted. It is a collection of brass wheels, steel pinions, and ruby jewels. But now, it is more. It is the story of a soldier, the memory of a wound, and the secret of a woman named Léonie. The task ahead is immense, but as he looks at the scattered parts, he feels a profound sense of purpose. He is not merely fixing a watch, he is restoring a story. The next stage was one of microscopic sculpture on his ancient lathe. After 2 days of this painstaking labor, it was done. He held the newly forged balance staff and a pair of tweezers, a minuscule sculpture of blued steel. He then began the reassembly, a sacred ritual. The final crucial step was to install the balance assembly. He held his breath, his tweezers placing the new heart into its jewel-set home. He gently nudged it. For a moment, it remained still. The workshop was silent, the other clocks seeming to hold their breath. And then it happened. The balance wheel gave a violent shudder, a spasm, and began to oscillate. From the heart of the machine, a new sound was born. It was not a tick, it was a beat. A single, loud, unnervingly organic thump, like a heartbeat from a reanimated corpse. The beat settled into a steady, quiet rhythm. But the workshop was no longer the same. The harmonious symphony Alistair Finch had governed for decades was now broken by a dissonant new voice. The beat of the trench watch was different, faster, more insistent, more alive than the mechanical ticking surrounding it. Late that night, as Finch worked to regulate the timing, he noticed something deeply unsettling. The Seth Thomas regulator clock on the wall, a paragon of precision for over 80 years, had stopped. Its great pendulum hung motionless. He scanned the room. A shelf of Art Deco clocks were all frozen, their hands pointing to 9:17, the exact moment he had started the trench watch. They were not broken. They were silent, as if in fear. The following days were a study in obsession. Alistair Finch found himself unable to focus on any other project. He would sit for hours at his bench, his head tilted, simply listening to the trench watch. The beat was changing. Sometimes it seemed to slow, as if weary. Other times it would race, a frantic, panicked pulse. He began to believe he could hear something within the ticking, a pattern, a cadence, a language just beyond his grasp. He leaned closer, the world shrieking until only he and the watch existed. He was no longer a horologist regulating a machine. He was a priest listening for a message from the other side, a warden listening to the whispers of his prisoner. He screwed the loop into his eye, determined to find a mechanical reason for the arrhythmia. As he stared into the soul of the watch, watching the ruby pallet fork lock and unlock the escape wheel, the world dissolved. The whirring of the gears became a roar. The lamplight became a blinding white glare. For a fraction of a second, he was no longer in his workshop. He was in a canvas tent, the air thick with the smell of mud, blood, and antiseptic. A young man with terror in his eyes lay on a cot. A lantern cast flickering shadows, and leaning over the man, wiping his brow with a cloth, was the face of a young woman. Her expression a mask of profound exhaustion and compassion. The vision vanished, leaving Finch gasping, his heart hammering against his ribs. Shaken, his hands trembling for the first time in 50 years, Alistair Finch stumbled away from his bench. The name, Léonie. It was no longer just a carving. It was a face. He turned to the one modern concession in his workshop, an old, dust-covered laptop. In the oppressive silence of the room, broken only by the watch's steady beat, he typed what he had seen. Léonie Gidot, nurse, American ambulance, Meuse, Argonne. The search results appeared. A digitized newspaper article from a French local paper, dated November 1918. He clicked. A grainy photograph loaded onto the screen. It was her, the same face from his vision. The article called her a heroine. He was not going mad. The ghost was real. He knew then that he could not simply return the watch. It was more than a restored heirloom. It was a vessel, a conduit for a memory that refused to die. To give it back without explanation would be a dangerous, irresponsible act. He looked at the tag with Clara's number on it. He picked up the ancient rotary phone on his desk, the act of dialing a slow, deliberate ritual. When she answered, his voice was a dry rasp. "Miss Clara?" "It is Alistair Finch. The work is complete." He paused, the ticking of the watch filling the silence. "But you must come. You must understand what it is you now possess. It is more than a machine. It has a voice." When Clara arrived the next day, she found the workshop changed. The air was cold, a deep, unnatural chill that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. The symphony of ticking was gone. The hundreds of clocks on the shelves were silent, their hands frozen, their faces like the eyes of a stunned, silent crowd. The only sound was the single, sharp, insistent heartbeat of her great-grandfather's watch, which sat alone in the center of the vast workbench. Alistair Finch stood beside it, looking more ancient than ever. He was paler, thinner, and the unnerving stillness he once possessed had been replaced by a tense, haunted energy. "Thank you for coming," he whispered, his eyes never leaving the watch. "It is restored," Alistair Finch said, his voice barely audible over the watch's ticking. "It keeps perfect time, but it keeps something else, too. A moment. One that was trapped inside." He gestured for her to approach. Clara stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes fixed on the small, tarnished object that was now the source of all the sound and cold in the room. It looked the same, yet it felt profoundly different, radiating a strange energy. "Take it," Finch urged, his voice tight with tension. As Clara reached out her hand, her fingers trembling slightly, the single lamp above the workbench began to flicker violently, casting the room in a strobing, nightmarish dance of light and shadow. Her skin made contact with the cold nickel of the case. The moment she touched it, the flickering stopped. The workshop was plunged into absolute darkness and silence. The ticking ceased. A gasp escaped Clara's lips, but it was soundless. She was no longer in the workshop. She saw it all. The blinding flash of an exploding shell, the searing pain in her great-grandfather's leg, his fall into the mud, the horrified look on his face as he saw the watch on his wrist stop at 4:17. And then a new face. Léonie, leaning over him, her voice a calm anchor in a world of chaos. It was not a story. It was not a vision. It was a memory. Her memory now. The ghost had passed from the machine to her.